Hello, how are you? Today I'm going to discuss about the concepts and philosophy of ethics. This is one of the very basic and very important lessons of life. Whatever profession you have, whether you go in media or journalism tomorrow, or you go in politics, you go in business, you go in other kind of different dimensions of the professions. The ethics, ethical principle, and philosophy, they are the foundational understanding wherever you go. So in this sense, this concept and philosophy of ethics is very important. It's not just the media ethics, it's the ethics of life. So it's a moral reasoning. Whenever you are in trouble, when you're in confusion, when you have some kind of problem, then you should think what ethical principle can be applicable here and how you can go for the definition. Another important part is, for example, in the previous lecture, we discussed about the paradox and moral reasoning. So in the paradox, there were four dimensions. Number one is the definition, the empirical finding, the truth. The second is the moral value. Second step, the third is the ethical principles, applications of ethical principle, and fourth is the loyalties. So these are the ethical principles. There are 4 or 5 dominant ethical principles in life. So we'll be discussing about that today. Here, the golden mean, this is one of the oldest ethical principle. It talks about the win-win game. Both sides should have some kind of passion, some kind of compromise, and this should come into the shared benefits or in a position of shared advantage. So it's golden mean, Aristotle, Confucius, Buddha, Chanakya, many Eastern and Western philosophers of that time, more than 2000 years ago, they were thinking in a similar way. And another is the categorical imperative. Is the pioneer of this ethical principle is Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher. And this philosophy has a very important influence from the Bible and biblical lessons and knowledge, that first is rule and then the action. Number third is the consequentialism. Consequentialism is a utilitarian principle. It talks about the consequences. If you have to decide something, think about the consequences. Usually the court, some political decisions are made based thinking about the consequences, what kind of consequences will have. So even journalism also, consequences is very important. Tomorrow you're writing about a report on religious conflict and how that can impact to your society where there are multiple reasons, and then the conflict may occur in the society too. So consequentialism is another important part. And then veil of ignorance, only merit, nothing else, no compromise, just merit. This is the veil of ignorance. And the fifth is pragmatic ethics. That is more about the media ethics that we have been practicing today in different parts of the world. So let's go. Ethical theory based on virtue or the golden mean. Virtue principle. Aristotle and Confucius, I'm mostly talking here about. Aristotle said moral virtue is the middle state determined by practical wisdom. Aristotle is the propounder of this philosophy, and he thinks that all extremes are wrong. You should compromise. You should be patient if there are some kind of extreme situation, whatever, it's war or it's family conflict or whatever situation, try to control yourself. That can reach you to the middle path. So all extreme are wrong, come to the middle path, then you can win, or this is the winning of every part of the conflict. So here are 4 major terminology used by Aristotle. These are called cardinal virtues: temperance, moderation in action, thought and feeling. Is a middle path again. Justice, between indifference means complete ignorance to indulgence means complete favor. And courage mean don't be too cowardice, don't overestimate yourself. So these two extreme in between, courage and the wisdom. Wisdom also is the middle state between stultifying caution and unreflective spontaneity. Here in this picture, you can see better indifference and indulgence, justice is in between, cowardice and temerity, courage is in between, caution and spontaneity, wisdom is in between. So here, another golden mid picture you can see here. I'll try to annotate here. I don't know how it works. Let's draw. For example, here, this one, courage. The vice of defect and vice of access, courage is in between. So the middle path, middle path is very important in politics. Middle path is very important in conflict, war. The middle path is always important to resolve different kind of conflict. Here you can see the terminology, for example, lexicon, because in terminology also we do have some kind of middle path. I don't know. So how to erase this again? Erase it, okay, yes. So there are the terminology and one extreme and another extreme, deficiency and access, and the balance is in between. So like a comparative adverb, adjective, courage, honesty, friendship, temperance, self-control. These are the in between, modesty, ambition, honesty, good humor, friendship. So flattery is one extreme and quarrelsomeness is another extreme, like that. And here is a sketch, the main idea of the middle path. So start from the problem, comes around, keep discussing, and come to a point where there all parties can agree on that. So this is the conflict resolution model, a kind of propriety, mean appropriateness before duty or law, character over conduct. Character is more important. Our outer behavior is a reflection of inner disposition. So how a person behaves in general reflects what somebody is thinking from inside. Even though this is debatable, but still this is in practice. And equal and harmony. Here you can see practical wisdom, phronesis. There are three technical words used in Aristotelian, the golden mean, technique, praxis, and phronesis. Phronesis is the practical wisdom regarding impact of action and the cause of change. So whenever you are making a decision, you should be very much practical how that can have consequence. Moral judgment and distinct from both theoretical knowledge and technical skill, not just on theory based, not on just on the too much selfishness. It should be somewhere between. Using practical wisdom, here is one example of a newspaper. The Philadelphia Inquirer still is running for around 150 years or plus. This newspaper tried to earn a lot of profits, and because of that, it was collapsed. So this is discussed in the textbook that we have been reading in this semester, this media ethics, cases and moral reasoning, page number 56. There is case 3. Just give me a second. 56. The bankruptcy of the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can see here. I don't know how. Philadelphia Inquirer. This is the case. So extreme focus on profits and cost cutting in the 90s and 20s made the newspaper collapse. Still not closed. It's surviving and is running till now. So if you try to do excessively anything, that can have a negative consequence. There is another newspaper also, not its words, because it collapsed and it never survived. That is the news of the world. The newspaper was 168-year-old when it was it was closed in 2011. The problem is the newspaper used to do phone taping when interviewing uh, with different agencies, and sometimes they're used for the blackmailing purpose for a different thing, advertising, sponsorship, money. And when this was exposed, and then the newspaper was closed. You can Google it, the news of the world, and you can find out what happened exactly. Aristotelian golden mean. I'm showing you here Ukraine and Russia's picture. Ukraine has their these both countries are in conflict now, and because of this conflict, even people in Canada, USA, or any part of the world are facing different kind of difficulties, including high cost in everyday life, in grocery and whatever. So Ukraine and Russia, they have their own reservation, they have their own stand. Aristotelian middle path can help resolve that, come into the dialogue table, and then create a situation where both parties can win. Win for their independence, win for their security. For example, Russia is blaming Ukraine for the security threat because Ukraine is more toward going towards the Western ally and NATO force and whatever. And Ukraine also has some kind of complaints and disagreements with Russia because of more involvement in internal politics and many other things. So if they come to the table and discuss, and they can create a win-win situation, what they need is patience, number one, practical wisdom, what applies the most now. Don't just think about the history. Come now, be realistic, and discuss. So it's not 100% just compromise, just you are compromising, just Ukraine to compromise, and Russia has a winning situation. No, it's a compromise in the sense both parties should feel we have won to some extent. And this golden mean also is not a mathematically equal distance between two extremes. It's not just the mathematical sense. It's the situation, interpretation, understanding, realization. Aristotle means involves the correct quantity, the correct timing, the correct people, the correct motives, and the correct man. Similar things here, the Aristotelian golden mean and the Confucius golden mean. Confucius also was advocating the same thing. Moral virtue is the appropriate location between the two extremes. And Confucius used a different word because of the language, like chong mean equilibrium, that we saw in Aristotle's golden mean, and yong, harmony. So equilibrium and harmony are the elements that were shared in Aristotle and Confucius at the same time. Let the states of equilibrium, let the state of equality and harmony exist in perfection. Happy order will prevail throughout heaven and earth, and all things will be nourished and flourished. So equality and harmony are the important part that Confucius highlighted. Applying Confucius' golden mean, identify all extreme, the same thing for the Aristotle as well. Resolve competing obligations using the golden mean, reject an extreme, choose the middle path, the best way. The golden mean has certain limitations, like golden mean principle, the ethical principle cannot be applied in all situations, like when there are some offenses, there are some adultery, theft, murder, some other kind of crime. So in that situation, golden mean cannot be applied. For example, if some person is killed by someone, and what is the middle point? There is no middle point, because once the person is died and cannot be resurrected. If the person could be resurrected, the golden mean could be applied. So some situations are like that. There is no compromise. For example, if somebody steals some other's property, right? And finally, the property is completely, property is found by police or some investigation, or the thief himself or herself brings the property back and realizes something. In that situation, definitely the punishment will be a bit reduced. That too, when the property is completely stolen and used and not given anything, then there is one kind of punishment. When the property is stolen but not damaged and returned, then there will be some degree of limited punishment, not the excessive punishment. So this is also some kind of application of the golden mean. But in crime situation, there is a rape, sexual violence, bullying, or whatever, middle path is difficult. This is just the summary of the principle here. Be moderate, avoid all extreme, respect every individual. And that applies in the journalism and media situation as well. Respect every individual, no news selection bias, presentation bias, news killing, news bucket, invading privacy, publishing nudity, whatever. So all extremes are rejected, ignored, or boycotted. Chanakya, Indian philosopher of similar time, look at c. 375 BC. Chanakya said, Hyati sarvatra varjayat. This is a Sanskrit language. Hyati means too much, or extreme, too much. So is varjayat mean boycotted, avoided, or to be avoided. Sarvatra means everywhere. So extreme, too much to be avoided in every field of life. That is journalism, that is politics, that is whatever. There is another theory, ethical theory based on duty. Duty principle is what we call categorical imperative. This is pioneered by Immanuel Kant. Kant's very popular quotation is, act only on that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. I mean, if you have to act something, then think about if it is applicable to everybody on this earth, then only you can do it that way. Act only on that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. I mean, whenever you are doing any activity, think if this is applicable to everyone in the same fashion. Main ideas are here. Is any genuine moral obligation can be universalized. Make some rules without any conditions. So if you have to use condition for one, use condition for everyone. Like truth telling. If truth telling is good for one person, try to apply that. Truth telling is good for everyone? Yes. So truth telling can be a universal law. Love your children. Can that be universal? Yes. Respect the elders. Universal law? Yes. So there are so many things. Or love your animals. Can be universal? It's debatable. So think about. We cannot simply say love dogs or cats. We should say if love animals, then you have to love chicken and hens and goats and cows and everything. So thinking when you are doing something, think if that can be applied to everyone, and then you should follow that. So these are the main ideas. Existence of higher truth, duty ethics. You are the one to follow the duty. Like synopsis of this principle, it's deontological principle, it's called in the Greek Latin term. Deon means duty. duty ethics. There are rules, you follow it. It's your duty. Rightness of action is determined by the intrinsic value, and it doesn't care about the consequences. Just you have the rule, you follow the rule. In some government office, for example, they have some rules and they follow the rules, and they don't care about how that rule is negatively affecting the customers, citizens, and other service recipients. Like, respect people's right to know. Yes, this is a good rule, right? Yeah, people have the right to know. This is the right. Can you do that in all situations? Right to know. Okay, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, is saying, okay, yeah, everyone should respect people's right to know. People want to know something, what is happening in Canadian Reserve Bank. People want to know how government decisions are made. People want to know what are the government secrets, for example. So people's right to know is important, but sometimes in some conditions it cannot be universalized. But categorical imperative says, follow those rules that can be universally applicable in all situations. And truth-telling principle, yes, tell truth. For example, in journalism, we have truth-telling principle. We have the source disclosing principle. As somebody said, who said? But in all news reports, you cannot see the source, because sources are protected for different reasons, for their privacy, for their security, for their job security. So even though this principle is very important, but this principle cannot be applied in all situations. And here is, believe in karma, don't worry about the results. In Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita advocated the idea of karma. Karma means works, duty. Follow your duty, don't care of the results. If you, for example, this can be applied for students as well. Follow the course, follow the activities, maintain the deadline, take part in all classes. Don't worry of the results. Definitely the results will be good. So this is the idea. First rule, then action. And this is like a divine command. So I already said this is more influenced by the biblical commands. In the Bible, God has 10 commands, and every Christian should follow those commands in all situations, without any reservation, without any confusion. Finish. It's God command. Kant's categorical imperative can be applied in some situation universally. Like cheating is always wrong in any society, in any country, whatever religion you follow, what is the culture you have. Stealing, dishonesty are good, bad, sorry. So this is always wrong, universally wrong, and this is a rule, for example. And certain actions are always right: benevolence, truth-telling, loving your kids, respecting your elders, or following the government orders, whatever, or helping neighbors. These are also universal rule that is always applicable. And so here in this case, Kant's categorical judgment, you are going to do some action, and before the action, you should think of the rule. What is the action about? Truth-telling? For example, you are a government employee, and the Kant's categorical imperative says, what is the maxim? Oh, you should tell truth to the public. All right. Now, as a government official, if you're following Kant's categorical imperative, and think about, can you use this in all situations, this truth, this information? Oh, yes. This is more applicable to the public, so I can do it. So if yes, then you can do the action. Mean you can disclose some information that is applicable to everyone. If you say, oh no, it has some secrecy, I have to maintain some government security or something, or you cannot follow that, then you cannot apply categorical imperatives. In the journalistic context, I have used here two pictures. Number one, there are two boys. They are 10 years old. They were involved in Liverpool murder case in 1993. These two boys of 10 years killed a toddler of 2 years plus, around 3 years. And now the ethical question is to the journalist, whether journalists should name the perpetrator because these two boys were the killer of the toddler, right? Or journalists should hide the name because they are just below the 10 years, or 10 years, or below, they are in the juvenile, below 14. And most of the law that said that if any child is involved in some kind of crime, and the protecting their identity is the rule in many countries. And so, but they were the killer of the toddler, and this killing was really graphic, and the British media were confused. Then the court ordered that British media should respect the juvenile, even though they are the perpetrator, and they should not disclose the name. And they did not. But the other media, especially in American media, they disclosed the name, even though they were the 10-year kids, perpetrators, whatever. In another situation, here you can say journalism is a public good. That one lady, two-face. Disclosing the source, protecting the source. In general, journalism principle says, disclose the source. Let the public know who told this. Then that will create the credibility. But there are some situations, the source doesn't want to be disclosed. In different situations, like whistleblowing situation, where somebody in the organization wants to disclose the corruption inside, but doesn't want to disclose his or her identity. Otherwise, his or her job will be lost, right? So there are two different schools of thought, whether to protect those identities, just to disclose the name, or go in a mixed way. So many rules, even though they can be applied universally, but they cannot be applied in different situations, like in journalism. So I'm just showing these two examples and explaining here. And the third is the ethical theory based on utility. Mill's principle of utility. Jeremy Bentham and J.S. Mill are the promoters of this ethical principle. Here you can see Jeremy Bentham's picture, this American political philosopher. The greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. Finish. So, I mean, if many people are happy about some activity, forget about the few people. Go with many. Actually, the whole world, the democratic world, the parliamentary system, that is depending on this principle, utility principle. Majority rules. For example, even though it's not a pure majority, Justin Trudeau is ruling in a coalition with another party, NDP. The greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. So it means again the same thing, majority. Rightness or wrongness assessed according to the total value are ultimately produced. If majority is saying, oh, this is right, go with them. So it is sometimes what a mean kind of principle, you know, because if majority says this is black, if majority is showing a white collar and saying this is a black collar, and then this rule says, okay, go, this is black collar because majority is saying. So instead of some kind of virtue or duty or some realistic empirical evidence, It goes with majority minority principle. And it goes with the consequences. What kind of consequences that occur? Yeah. A theory of morality, utilitarianism advocates action that foster happiness and oppose action that cause unhappiness of majority people. It promotes the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. And reason-based approach, consequence first. Think about, so in journalism also this is very much applicable. When you are writing a report, think about what happens tomorrow because of this report. When people read this report, once it is published, how they react. If they are reacting in a different, in a way that destroys the harmony of the community, then control it. So utilitarian does not account for things like feeling, emotion, culture, justice, whatever. No. Majority, minority, cost-benefit analysis, where is profit, where is loss. So what do you do? Here are two situations, for example. Stop animal abuse. Yes, this is a good slogan you might have heard or seen or watched in television. Stop animal abuse. From the categorical imperative perspective, you must stop all kind of abuse, not just dogs and cats on this planet. It means everybody should be at least vegetarian from tomorrow. So this stop animal abuse is not a universally applicable thing because people are just referring this for dogs and cats and some kind of pet animals at home. Utilitarian, think of your happiness, forget about justice, love, care, emotion, whatever. Greatest amount of good for a greatest number of people means if many people are happy by killing one animal, okay, kill it. So this is a kind of mean type of principle. So here another is the majority rules in democracy. That is definitely important here again. Another picture here, another situation. There is one vehicle and it's going in the straight direction and there is a protest and at least 5 people are there trying to disturb the route. And there is another bypass and there is also a protest. One person is there to disturb the route. What to do? So categorical imperative says, if more people are being killed, for example, if this vehicle is to go through the straight way, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 people will be killed or injured or whatever. Right? So what to do? Then the vehicle's driver should think, where can be a fewer loss, a limited loss? Then the vehicle should divert to the bypass direction where there is only 1 people will be lost. This is the utilitarian principle. Categorical imperative says differently. Categorical imperative means rule. If you have to go in the front, in this front way, go to the front way. Don't care about how many people are lost. It is your duty to go, finish. So you're not going to go to the bypass to avoid the majority loss. You're simply going where you have to go. So in different situations, these principles are very right. And in different situations, these principles are a bit mean and they do not apply in all situations. And there are 2 kinds of utilitarianism principles. Act utilitarianism means in a specific case, utilitarian approach is implemented. Rule utilitarianism means that is a rule and everybody applies. For example, majority rules in the government. So it's a rule utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism is, for example, in this picture you can see again. So in general, the bus should go to the direction of the route. Straight line. This is their direction. But in case of damage, they can bypass it to avoid a huge loss. So this is applicable in different situations, especially in war, in kind of controlling some kind of conflict in some protest program. The police, the security forces, they try to restrain and control and try not to be their major loss as a consequence. So the question here to consider, how do we account for long-term consequences of decisions that are not always able to be foreseen? So when you have not done anything, and how do you think about the consequences? This is a good question. So you have to analyze other similar activities. You have to read text. You have to interact with the public, what kind of consequences will be when there are some positive or negative decisions. So based on that, you have to assess it. Sometimes even if you do some kind of assessment, but you cannot predict the consequences. There are sometimes like this, but be careful and be cautious, analyze the history, and this is the only point. And what if the majority rejects the basic standard of decency? Yes, it's a problem. Like in Afghanistan, for example, all girls are banned from the school and university and public employment. And this is the majority rule because all the parliament is the male dominated parliament, almost all men. I don't know what kind of parliament they have now. So the second question creates a problem. In all situations, utilitarian principle cannot be applied. What problems are generated by defining the public good as the sum of the total of the all private goods? Private goods means some selfishness, your benefit. Public good means the general welfare of the community. So you have to interpret in a different situation. Situation by situation is act utilitarianism. So again, the cost benefit analysis. And the negative part is, it has positive part, maximizing happiness, useful, minimizing harm. Action brings advantage. So majority first. But the weakness is tyranny of the majority. If majority decides something wrong, then also you have to tolerate that. No justice to marginalized people. So no inclusiveness. Marginal people, those who are not in majority, they will be suffering a lot. And the fourth principle, ethical theory based on the rights. So this is called Rawls, John Rawls. John Rawls is the pioneer of this principle. A veil of ignorance means you don't know anything about them. Justice emerges when negotiating without social differentiations. I mean, if you don't know their caste, their age, their gender, their other socio-demographic information, then you can be neutral and you can make a good decision. This is the idea of John Rawls here. Fairness, justice, sometimes fairness means justice sometimes means quantity. House determine what is right in any given situation. Same reward given to everyone for the same work. Equal pay. So there is no gender discrimination. There is no racial discrimination. For example, some immigrants and non-immigrants discrimination, or indigenous versus non-indigenous people's discrimination between them. So no favor of any kind. Equal treatment. What you are, what you have shouldn't determine what you now should get. I mean, which person is rich, which is not, which is educated, which is not, which is from this ethnic background, which is not. So it doesn't care anything because every socio-demographic information are removed and only your action, your activity is evaluated. And so here is a long line here. I don't know whether this cursor is shown here. This long line is a kind of veil. No arbitrary distinction can be determined. No favor, no rejection. This is the veil. We step behind it to make the decisions the other side. So evaluation is completely neutral and they don't know anything about who are the persons being evaluated. So it functions like a barrier here in the black. See this here. It functions like a barrier, keeps out race, class, gender, group interest, sexual orientation, age, occupations, completely out, and then it evaluates just the work. It's good, especially in exam, especially in different kind of competitions, it works. Veil of ignorance. Here you can see the picture again. A lady is there, some small boy or kid is there, some other physically disabled people are there, some people with some other support are there. So different kind of people are there, veils of ignorance. And but the evaluator is not seeing who is who. What are the priorities for them? The evaluator doesn't see that. Just the evaluator is evaluating the activities they have done. Roles and social differences eliminated. Equality behind the veil intended to protect the weaker party and minimize risk. Peer review draft articles. Sometimes we submit the research articles to some journals, and they access two kind of versions. One version with our names, those who are the writers or researchers, email, contact information, whatever. This is office copy. And another version without any introductory information. No name, no university, no email, nothing, just the article. And so this article, the editors, they send it to some peer reviewer. It is called blind peer review because they don't know who the authors are. They simply read the work and evaluate and give comment, and then they make some kind of suggestion whether this article be publishable or not. So if the two reviewers, if they say, yes, this article is publishable, but this needs some kind of improvement, then the editor decides the article to be published and sent back to the author. If one author says, okay, one evaluator says, okay, it is publishable, another evaluator says it is not publishable, then editor decides what to do, reads the comment and makes a decision. So peer-reviewed draft article completely follows the principle of veil of ignorance, and so it is called blind peer review. In examination also, papers are evaluated in that way. And in some kind of competitions, the works are evaluated, essay competitions, for example. A theory of justice, it rejects utilitarianism. Majority doesn't rule here. It's merits rules equally without knowing them. Complete rule. You are not making rule thinking of some people. You are making rule because that is universally applicable. Fairness is the fundamental idea of justice, equal rights to everyone. Egalitarian society, for example, Karl Marx advocated egalitarian society in the Communist Manifesto. So everybody is equally treated, especially in rule of law, usually it happens. No personal biases. A journalist should be able to report against its own media house. That should be published within the media, but it is not happening usually. So equality versus equity. Now, this veil of ignorance also has some kind of limitation. For example, see the picture here. So here is a bird, a monkey, maybe penguin and elephant and fish and dogs and what is that? Another. So these are, they're standing in a line, and the person is trying to evaluate them by giving some activity. For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So actually, this exam itself is not a good exam because every creature there is standing in a row. They have their own specialties and own limitation. Monkey, for example, quickly climb the tree, and the birds also can be swift there. What else for the elephant? What else for even dog also cannot climb that tree, and fish is the poorest one, poorest performers here. So in this situation, in society, every person is different. Every person has a different kind of capabilities, different kind of socio-economic, physical, mental status. So equal treatment is not possible. So this is the limitations of this particular theory. And here is another ethical theory based on compassion. Judeo-Christian person as ants. I mean, is a more Christian philosophy based theory. So love your neighbors as yourself. This is one. And what is the will of heaven like? The answer is to love all men everywhere alike. These are more philosophical than practical, actually. Yes, in theory we should, but it is not happening. All moral obligation derive from the command of love command to love God and humankind, love for neighbor as normative, regards for others as personal, not legalistic, human made in the image of God without unconsciousness. So idea is that love everywhere, but this idea is not working because there's so many conflict in different countries in different way, physical conflict or some kind of discrimination type of conflict. So it is happening. So this is even though this is a principle, ethical principle, but it is more philosophical than the real. Here are the 10 commands, for example. In Bible, the God has 10 commands. So this theory also brings the 10 commands of the God into a reflection of that 10 command is here. Respect differences, ask their opinion and concerns, pray for their spiritual growth. It is more focused just on human beings and their well-being. Don't make assumption judgments. Don't grumble about them behind the back. Forgive even if reconciliation isn't possible. Show love and compassion. Don't do what's best for them for the benefit. To love is to accept a person as he or she is with unalterable commitment and permanent loyalty. People are never given instrumental value, cost benefit analysis as in utilitarian. So these are the very good principles, very, very good principles. But these are more philosophical because practically these are difficult. Failure to adherence to the practice, again, love versus justice. So if you are just making love or just doing love to someone, then you forget about justice. That if you are a father or mother of some child, and some child does some kind of a small, big, whatever, some crime, still you are loving the child. I mean, you are compromising the justice. So too much love is important. Too much love sometimes can be bad to justice system. That can affect the justice system. So this principle also has some kind of advantages and disadvantages. So if it is applicable, the world will be like a heaven. If it is not, then we have different kind of differences here. And finally, we have pragmatic ethics. Hutchins Commission's report. This is just, I'm talking about the 5 main principles that journalists should follow. There was a commission formed in 1943 by the American media and academic scholars. And this commission was there to ensure whether journalists need code of ethics, what journalists should prioritize, and how journalists should work. These were the major ideas. And after 5 years of investigation and research, and this commission submitted a report prepared and submitted a report in 1947 that is called social responsibility theory later on. So, and for example, here is the picture of a free and responsible press, the report submitted by Hutchins Commission in 1947. And here are some major highlights of the report. The media should provide a truthful, comprehensive, and intelligent account of the day. I mean, truth-telling principle from the point of view of categorical, imperative. So media should tell truth, no compromise, just truth. Number one, media should serve as the forum for exchange of comments and criticism, market of ideas. I mean, media should not just promote government agenda. Media should not just promote the media owners agenda. Media should not just promote the journalist agenda. Media should promote public agenda. And media should be a platform for criticism, platform for arguments, platform for, is a kind of marketplace of ideas. The media should present and clarify the goals and values of society. So media should have the right to discuss, criticize the social, cultural, moral values and everything in society so that we can think and we can move forward. The media should provide full access to the day's intelligence. I mean, all kind of news should have some kind of space in the media platform. No news killing, no news biases. So these are the major principles. And based on the same, there are some other principles developed out of those 5 points. Here are some other points developed by two scholars, Kovacs and Rosenthal, in 2001, and they kept updating the book, and it is published in 2022 as well. So republished, I mean, it's a fourth edition maybe. So journalism's first obligation is to the truth, I mean, truth telling. It's loyalty to the citizens, I mean, they should serve the citizens' interest. Its essence is discipline of verification, I mean, all information should be verified. Its practitioner must maintain the independence from those they cover. I mean, if journalists are already the member of political parties, and they cannot fairly report the political activities, so they should be separate from that. It must serve as the independent monitor of power. So it should be like a watchdog mechanism. Provide a forum for public criticism. We just talked about marketplace of ideas. All kind of opinions should be published without reservation or killing or sidelining. Significant, interesting, and relevant. So what is significant, what is interesting, what is relevant to the public, that should be published, not else. So what is relevant to the some business persons, some sponsors, some advertisers, this should not be published. Rather, what public want, that is important. And it must keep the news comprehensive and proportional. So, I mean, all aspects of the society should be covered, not just one aspect, not just the leftist only. Its practitioner must be allowed to exercise their personal conscience. I mean, journalists should have the power to think, argue, and write. No media owner should have some kind of directions and rule. Oh, you cannot publish against this particular agency, for example. So I kept giving examples of the Washington Post is owned by the Amazon.com now. So a Washington Post is criticized, you can Google it, fine, that it is not fairly reporting about the issues within the Amazon workers, because the Washington Post itself is being run by the Amazon's boss. Citizens do have rights and responsibility when it comes to the news. I mean, citizen journalism is being promoted, and citizens also have the rights to verify information, add information, support journalism, and do some advocacy and watchdogging role. And now, these all 5, 6 ethical principles we discussed today. And to whom is moral duty owed, and who ought to decide? These are the questions from this book, Clifford, Christian, and et al. So here are some quick points. We have a duty to ourselves. We have duty to clients, subscribers, supporters. We have duty to our organizations of work. We have duty to professional colleagues. We have duty to society. And again, Potter Box comes there to give the priorities and loyalties and selecting and using ethical principles. So where are the loyalties now? Duty to society is critical. Ethical decision-making must be marked by the sincere sense of social responsibility and a genuine concern for the citizenry. So you are in a society, And community interest, think about the community interest, just not your interest. You are being rich and others are being poor. No, it's not fair. You cannot go that way. In the paradox, the loyalty component necessitates the acknowledgements of the implications of decisions for institutions, social groups, before an ethical decision is made. So you have some kind of value system in the media. You are employed, for example. So media's value system, political value system, your personal choice also affect this selection of ethics. What kind of ethical principle you select, it affects that. But it sometimes the organization can control some kind of value system, not all. And sometimes there are some government rules, like in communist countries, they try to create a blanket rule policy, and then all media should follow that, otherwise they can be boycotted from the service. And so here are some questions. Are parents alone accountable for the programs their children watch, or do advertisers and networks carry responsibility? So these questions give us that who is responsible? Only one person in the society, or there are multiple stakeholders? So parents are responsible for the program they choose for children, but advertisers and network carriers and the journalists also should be responsible. What kind of programs should be beneficial to kids? Number one. Can producers of entertainment dismiss their responsibility for quality programming by arguing that they merely give the public what it wants? So public wants, for example, some vulgar content, for example. So if you are trying to feed the vulgar content to the public, then gradually we are damaging the social norms and values. So we have to consider those ideas too. And there are some corporate obligations as well. So corporate organizations also have some obligations. And journalists also, because journalists also are promoting the voice of voiceless. They are the watchdog of government system and agency. So we all have some part of the responsibilities, and we all must follow. Here, seek truth and report it. Truth to report. And this is more the categorical imperative type of value system. This is, you can apply that ethical principle. Minimize harm, that is more utilitarian. If you have to minimize harm and maximize the happiness. Act independently, that is veil of ignorance type of principle. And be accountable and transparent, this is social responsibility. So these four key components of journalism that are widely applicable are coming from four different ethical streams. So in this way, we have to think that no ethical principle is universal and applicable in all situations. All ethical principles, they have their own kind of value system, and then they can be applied in different situations. For what? For the welfare of the human being, for the welfare of the society we are living. Thank you very much for this today's presentation. If you have any questions, you can write me. Thank you.